And it's time to check in with the markets thanks to our partners Forsyth, Barr. And it's a busy week out of Australia this week. Zoe Wallis is with us. Zoe, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Yeah, we've got reporting season kicking off. What can we expect?
We have indeed. So we've seen the wind down of international reporting season and we're ramping up in Australasia. So a big week for Australia this week. We've got CBA out, which is obviously a big focus being the largest weighted company in the ASX 200 at the moment. So looking at a reasonable okay period out of there, what we're seeing in terms of the earnings for CBA is relatively low credit defaults, so still pretty benign credit environment for the big Australian banks. We've also got a few other companies, including Telstra, Car Group and Ventia, reporting this week, as well as the first couple of companies out in New Zealand, which includes Vital Healthcare and Vista Group.
Meanwhile, over in the US, of course, biggest economy in the world, one we like to watch very closely, and they've got inflation data coming this week, which investors are watching very closely.
Yeah, the big question remains, how much are tariffs actually going to show up in terms of good prices? And we are starting to see signs of this coming through, particularly in select buckets where you're importing more and more goods from, particularly from the US, from China into the US, for example. More generally, though, we are seeing inflation tick up in the US, and we're expected to see core prices rise to an annual inflation rate of 3% year on year. Now, that's moving in the opposite direction to what the US Federal Reserve would like. They want to see that coming back down closer to 2%. But the big outstanding question is really whether this is just going to be a transitory period of shifting to a higher level of overall prices in the US economy, or whether inflation actually starts to take off again and prices more generally continue to rise. So that's what they're watching very closely.
Yeah, absolutely. And just actually coming back to Australia for a second, labour market data out Thursday for them?
Yes, we do. So we've got unemployment rate data, and also the big focus in Australia this week is actually on the Reserve Bank of Australia's policy decision. So that's out Tuesday afternoon. So they're very much expected to cut by 25 basis points. You're seeing inflation pressure come down. You're seeing the labour market start to ease a little bit over there. And that should be enough to open the door for them to cut interest rates by 25 basis points, as we expect to see the Reserve Bank here do next week.
What about our Reserve Bank decision is due next week? As you said, what about reporting season, obviously kicking off, but in earnest this week here in New Zealand?
We've got two companies out this week, really, and then really in earnest next week. But what we are expecting to see is pockets of a turnaround in terms of some of the companies we're looking at. It's still a pretty tough domestic economic backdrop, and so some of those cyclical companies are still struggling. But where we see the most potential upside is companies where they are taking the right actions to self-course correct. They've made some tough decisions over the last few years. That's hurt their profitability and their results up until now, but are starting to see the payoff from that. So like Spark perhaps, and watching for some sort of those upside surprises perhaps over the coming reporting season.
Zoe, appreciate your time this morning. Zoe Wallis, investment strategist at Forsyth Barr, and we look at the markets every Monday thanks to our partners Forsyth Barr.